Lydia lived in a small, dusty village in Ghana, where the sun beat down on mud-brick homes, and life was a constant struggle. At 18, with skin the color of rich earth, and bright, hopeful eyes, she carried the weight of her family's poverty on her slender shoulders. Her father, a kind but frail man, had fallen ill, and their small farm barely yielded enough to eat. Every morning, Lydia would walk miles to the nearest market, her head adorned with a heavy basket of yams or plantains, hoping to sell enough to buy medicine. The village elders often spoke of tradition, of marriage as a way for a family to survive. Lydia knew her turn would come, but she dreamt of a different life, one where she could work, learn, and lift her family out of hunger herself. She watched other girls marry older, wealthier men from nearby towns, their futures seemingly secured. But Lydia wished for love, for a partner who saw her heart, not just her family's needs. One sweltering afternoon, her mother called her inside, her face etched with worry. "My daughter," she began softly, "there is news. Old man Kwame, from the next village. He has found you a husband." Lydia's heart dropped, like a stone. She knew this day would come, but she wasn't prepared for the crushing weight of reality. Lydia's stomach churned as her mother spoke. "His name is Emmanuel. He is a farmer, like your father. But his land is small, and he has little to his name." Lydia closed her eyes. A poor farmer. This was not the future she had imagined. She had hoped for at least a trader from the market town, someone who could offer a little more stability. Marrying a poor man meant trading one struggle for another. Only this time, it would be her own family's burden, not just her parents'. She looked at her father, weak in his bed, and her younger siblings, their eyes wide with hunger. Her family's survival depended on this. Tradition demanded it. Old man Kwame, the matchmaker, was a respected elder. His word was law. To refuse would bring shame upon her family, and possibly ruin. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. She had to be strong. "When will I meet him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her mother gently touched her hand. "He will come to our compound tomorrow evening. Be polite, Lydia, remember your family." That night, Lydia lay awake, staring at the thatched roof, listening to the crickets. The thought of marrying a stranger, a poor stranger at that, filled her with a profound sadness. Her dreams of a different life seemed to vanish, like smoke. The next evening, Lydia dressed in her best Kent cloth, though it was faded and worn. Her mother had braided cowrie shells into her hair, a symbol of good fortune. Her heart pounded as she heard the sound of footsteps approaching their compound. Old man Kwame's booming voice announced their arrival. "Lydia, come out and greet your future husband." Taking a deep breath, Lydia stepped into the dim light of the lantern. Her eyes met his. Emmanuel was not what she expected. He was tall, lean, and his dark skin glowed in the evening light. His eyes, though, were what caught her. They were kind, almost shy, and held a depth she couldn't quite place. He wore a simple smock, and his hands were rough, clearly from working the land. He looked genuinely nervous, avoiding her direct gaze. "Emmanuel, this is Lydia," Old man Kwame announced. Emmanuel nodded, a small, polite smile on his face. He didn't try to boast or show off, unlike some of the other suitors she had seen for her friends. He simply looked at her with a quiet respect. Despite his poverty, there was a certain dignity about him. Lydia felt a strange flicker of curiosity. This man was not the arrogant, demanding type she had feared. He was just Emmanuel. The conversation was awkward, mostly led by Old man Kwame and Lydia's parents. Emmanuel spoke little, answering questions with short, thoughtful sentences. Lydia also remained mostly silent, observing him. He didn't brag about his farm or promise riches he couldn't deliver. Instead, he spoke simply of his willingness to work hard and to care for a family. He even looked at Lydia's father, with genuine concern, asking about his health. Lydia noticed how he listened intently when her mother spoke, never interrupting. It was a small detail, but it stood out. Most men she knew, especially those seeking a wife, would dominate the conversation. As the evening drew to a close, Emmanuel finally met her gaze, directly. "Lydia," he said, his voice soft, but clear. "I know this is not how you wished to find a husband. But I promise to be a good man to you. I will work hard for our family." His sincerity was disarming. Lydia found herself nodding, slightly, a tiny knot of hope forming in her chest. He hadn't promised a life of luxury, but he had promised respect and hard work. Perhaps, she thought, that was more important than wealth. The idea of marrying him still scared her, but the fear was now mixed with a strange, hesitant acceptance. The wedding was simple, as expected, for two poor families. There were no lavish feasts, no expensive gifts, just the essential traditions. The village gathered under the shade of a large mango tree. Lydia wore a simple white cloth, borrowed from a kind neighbor, and her mother had adorned her hair with fresh flowers. Emmanuel, too, wore his best, a clean, pressed smock. As they stood before the elders, pledging their vows, Lydia felt a mix of resignation and a faint, new sense of duty. She looked at Emmanuel, who held her hand, gently. His grip was firm, reassuring. He was not handsome, in the way of city men, but his face was honest and earnest. He was her husband now. After the blessings and traditional dances, Lydia said a tearful goodbye to her family. Her mother whispered, "Be strong, my daughter. Make a good home." With a heavy heart and a new resolve, Lydia walked beside Emmanuel to his small, humble compound. It was a simple mud brick hut with a thatched roof. Even smaller than her parents' home. A tiny patch of struggling cassava plants grew nearby. This was her new life. This was the reality of being married to a poor farmer. Life with Emmanuel was exactly as Lydia had anticipated, hard work and constant effort. Their small hut was cozy, but offered little comfort. Every day, Lydia would rise before dawn, fetch water from the communal well, and help Emmanuel on his meager farm. The sun was relentless, the soil stubborn. They grew enough to eat, barely, and often had to supplement their meals with wild fruits, or what little she could trade at the market. Emmanuel was true to his word. He was a kind and hard-working man. He never raised his voice, always shared what little they had, and treated her with respect. He listened to her ideas for growing different crops, and even helped her mend her worn market basket. Lydia found a quiet appreciation for his gentle nature. She learned to cook his favorite meals, to mend his clothes, and to find small joys in their shared struggles. They often sat by the fire at night, talking about their dreams, for a better harvest, for healthy children, for a future that seemed far away, but still glimmered in their hopeful eyes. Lydia still longed for more, for an easier life, for her future children. But she found a strange, growing peace in her marriage to Emmanuel. He may have been poor, but he was a good man. Days turned into weeks, and Lydia found a rhythm in her new life. Then, one morning, Emmanuel did not return from his walk to the forest. He usually went to collect firewood or hunt small game, but he was gone for longer than usual. Lydia waited, a knot of worry tightening in her stomach. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across their small compound, and still no Emmanuel. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped her heart. What if he had fallen ill in the forest? What if wild animals had attacked him? She rushed to Old Man Kwame's compound, her voice trembling as she explained Emmanuel's disappearance. The elder, with a frown, gathered a few young men, and they set out with lanterns to search. Lydia sat by her hut, peering into the darkness, tears streaming down her face. Hours passed. Just as despair began to overwhelm her, she saw a figure, approaching, in the distance. It was Emmanuel, walking slowly, a large, heavy sack, slung over his shoulder. He looked exhausted, but unharmed. Relief washed over Lydia, powerful and immediate. But, as he drew closer, she noticed something. He seemed different. His eyes held a flicker of something she hadn't seen before, a hidden purpose. Emmanuel explained that he had gone deeper into the forest than usual. He said he found a special type of wood and had a small encounter with a stubborn antelope that led him astray. Lydia accepted his explanation, but a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. He looked too calm for someone who had been lost and almost attacked. Over the next few weeks, Emmanuel's mysterious disappearances became more frequent. He would leave early in the morning, sometimes returning late at night. Always with a plausible story, always looking tired. But sometimes, Lydia would notice things. A faint, unfamiliar scent on his clothes, like fine cologne, not the smell of the village or the forest. A small, unexplainable glint of something metallic in his hand that he quickly hid. He would often bring back small, practical gifts, a new hoe, a better cooking pot, which he said he traded for the special wood he found. These were gifts they desperately needed, yet Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Emmanuel was still kind, still hardworking, but there was a part of him, a secret, that he kept hidden. She felt a growing unease, a sense of living with a stranger. Who was Emmanuel, really? One sweltering afternoon, Lydia was cleaning their small hut when she found something unusual, tucked deep under Emmanuel's sleeping mat. It was a small, sleek, black box. Curiosity overcoming her, she carefully opened it. Inside, nestled on soft velvet, was a mobile phone. Not the old, basic kind some villagers owned, but a modern, expensive smartphone, unlike anything she had ever seen. Her heart pounded. This was not something a poor farmer would own. It had a screen that glowed with vibrant colors and strange symbols she didn't understand. As she stared at it, the screen suddenly lit up, displaying a message. It was a notification from a news app, showing a headline about a major investment deal in Accra, the capital city. Below the headline was a picture of a man. Lydia gasped. It was Emmanuel. But this Emmanuel was different. He was dressed in a sharp, expensive suit, his face serious and confident, standing beside other powerful-looking men. The caption identified him as Mr. Emmanuel Mensah, CEO of Golden Tree Holdings, Ghana's youngest billionaire. Lydia's world spun. The kind, shy, poor farmer she had married was a billionaire. The truth hit her with the force of a thunderclap. Lydia stared at the phone, her mind reeling. The poor farmer she was forced to marry was Emmanuel Mensah, the youngest billionaire in Ghana, a name whispered with awe in the distant towns. Every humble act, every quiet disappearance, every simple gift, now twisted into a complex lie. He had played the part of a struggling villager so convincingly. Why? Was it a cruel game? A test? Anger, betrayal, and confusion washed over her in waves. How could he deceive her so completely? She thought back to their wedding, his shy smile, his promise to be a good husband. Was any of it real? She clutched the phone, her knuckles white. She had given him her trust, her acceptance of a difficult life, and he had built it all on a foundation of falsehoods. When Emmanuel returned that evening, looking tired as usual, Lydia met him with a gaze of hardened steel. Emmanuel, she said, her voice trembling, but firm. Who are you? She held up the phone, the news article, glaringly visible on the screen. Emmanuel's usually calm face, drained of color. His secret, so carefully guarded, was out. The truth, like a mighty river, had finally broken its banks. Emmanuel's shoulders slumped. The pretense was over. He sat down heavily on their simple wooden stool, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and relief. Lydia, he began, his voice barely a whisper. I can explain. Please, listen. He told her his story. He had indeed grown up poor, but his sharp mind and tireless work ethic had led him to incredible success in the city. He had built Golden Tree Holdings from the ground up. However, his wealth had also brought him heartache. He had seen women drawn to his money, not his heart, and false friends who sought only to exploit him. He longed for genuine connection, for someone who would love him, for who he truly was, not for his billions. So, he had devised a plan. He came back to his ancestral village, disguised as a poor farmer, hoping to find a wife who would accept him in his humblest form. I heard about you, Lydia, he said, looking at her with pleading eyes. I heard. You were hardworking, kind, and brave. I wanted to know if you would still be those things, if you married a man with nothing. Lydia listened, her emotions swirling. The betrayal still stung, but his words resonated. He hadn't wanted her money, he had wanted her heart. The air in the small hut was thick with unspoken emotions. Lydia looked at Emmanuel, no longer seeing just a poor farmer or a secret billionaire, but a man who had sought true love amidst a world of artifice. His explanation didn't erase the hurt of the deception, but it explained the sincerity she had always felt from him. You lied to me, she said, her voice soft. But you also treated me with respect when you had no reason to. Emmanuel nodded, his eyes earnest. I know I hurt you. I was wrong to deceive you. But I truly do want you, Lydia, for who you are. And now, I want to share my true life with you, if you will have it. He extended his hand, not as a wealthy man, but as the humble Emmanuel she had come to know. Lydia looked at his hand, then at his eyes, which held deep love and remorse. She knew now that true wealth wasn't just about money, but about character and genuine connection. She took his hand. Then let's build something real, together, Emmanuel, she said, a new resolve in her voice. From that day, Lydia became Mrs. Emmanuel Mensah, not just the wife of a billionaire, but his trusted partner. She used her wisdom and kindness to help manage his charitable foundations, uplifting other villages and empowering women. Their story became a legend, a testament to true love, found not in riches, but in the heart. And to the powerful truth that what truly matters is not what you have, but who you are.